What's up, guys? It is March 15th, 2017. Time for Q&A response from today. Actually getting this done on the same day this time, which is rare these days. It's a ton of good questions here. Hopefully I can get through these in a timely manner, so stick with me if I talk a little fast. All right, first one. To develop glutes, is it better to prop them up on the counter or to twist my body to the point my kidneys are in front of me? Seems like these are two of the best exercises nowadays. So, never said all the questions were serious. So, most of them are. So, referring to the Instagram posing, both are essential. I just like to suggest to people to practice each pose in different lighting and using different filters just to make sure that you get, you can kind of figure out what works best for you. Kind of like diet, figure out what diet works best for you, what approach works best for you. Same with Instagram photos. It's all an angle process. If you look halfway decent and your ass isn't completely flat, then you could pretty much pull off either pose if you practice them and find the right lighting and filters to use. Maybe put them on Snapchat or fucking Boomerang or whatever it is and make your ass move around. I don't know. Figure it out. All right, when it comes to using Matador for a GDA, do you have a certain amount of carb to cap ratio that you like your clients to use on average? Or, oh wait, lost my spot here. Carb to cap ratio that you like to use on average. For example, if 2 caps for a meal that's 75 carbs or 3 caps for a meal that's 125 carbs. And could you possibly touch on some other GDAs in this regard as well? Okay, so if you look at the actual Matador bottle, they have a suggestion. I believe it's 40 to 60 carbs for a cap, and then above that, you can use 2 caps. And I think that's relatively, that's going to be relatively accurate for most people. The thing to think about, though, is the people that are eating larger carb meals are probably more insulin sensitive anyhow. So they might need less GDA to begin with. So it's kind of it kind of levels itself off. You can think of it that way. I mean, people that are eating 100 grams of carbs in a meal probably are pretty insulin sensitive anyhow. So, they might be able to still use 1 cap because their 100's like 50 to someone else, so on and so forth. So usually, yeah, I like that. I think for most normal meals, unless it's much, much larger than your other meals, anything 100 or under, I'm all right with the cap. Because those people are using higher, like I said, they're more insulin sensitive anyhow. So going over that or doing a refeed, something like that, 2 caps, definitely no problem with that. I've even had some people experiment with using it around intra-workout. I don't do this much. It's something that people can kind of experiment with, but that's another option. Now, he mentions 3 caps. I'm not super keen on going on 3 caps, at least not that often, just because maybe in like situations with one really huge refeed, yeah, I think that's fine. Or in a day's time, it's perfectly fine. But the issue is that the chromium content's probably going to be a little too high. And you're looking at toxicity at that point. So with the chromium in here, I believe, yeah, it's Chromax, so it's chromium picolinate, which it has 300 micrograms per cap anyhow. So I would just be weary of toxicity, but everything else is going to be fine. As far as other GDAs go, yeah, I mean, they're also going to be dose dependent or kind of on the same scale. Like, for example, regular meal, whatever regular is to that person. If you're looking at berberine, for example, it's about 500 milligrams. It's going to be, have a pretty good effect going up to possibly 1,000 on something else. And that depends on what extract it is too. Is it HCl? Is it an extract? Is it? It's the same with all the GDAs. They need to be the extract. Like, for example, the Matador uses gymnema, which it has the extract. So I'm looking at the label here. It actually contains 75% gymnemic acids, which is a good extract. So the dose is obviously going to be a little bit lower, but that's another one I like. He mentions cinnamon, so 500 milligrams being pretty normal, 1,000 pushing it up a little higher, maybe 2,000 on cinnamon. You could go a little higher on that. And chromium, Usually 200 is going to have some effect, and 400 for a sitting is going to be on the higher end, possibly up to 600, which you would get in 2 caps of Matador anyhow. So there's a ton of GDA, so I can't possibly go into all of them, but that's a general guideline. When doing a rowing movement or pull down for back development, what do you feel are important notes to make to get the best contraction? I've heard people say it's about the elbows and the angles when pulling. Be curious on your thoughts. So when they say the elbows, people say pull through the elbows. That's just because you want to take too much grip out of it, and any kind of wrist flexion that might flex your forearm, it's going to flex your bicep. If you can pull through your elbows, if you can kind of picture that and do that, then normally the contraction's good. That's a good cue to use. Keep your wrist straight. Don't over grip the bar. Use a hook, like a hook grip, thumb over grip if you want. That's helpful for a lot of people. I feel once people get it down, then they can kind of nail it after that. But another one I like to do too is if you have someone around you, anyone that's around you, kind of have them jab at your lats a little bit with the finger, or put their fingers on it, or grab them even. And you can, from a nervous system standpoint, you can make that connection and be able to engage your lats that way. Not everyone has someone that they can just grab in the gym and have them come over and hold on to their lats, but that does work really well. Making sure that you're not overly pinching your scapula, depending on if it's a pull down, and a row is going to be a little bit different. But I like to kind of envision too, like I'm doing a lat spread, like I'm opening my lats, and that keeps them open. I'm not pulling just with all traps. Those are some cues I like to use, but I feel that it really comes down to the grip, not overly gripping it, keeping your wrist straight. Those are the big ones. How would you go about drying out a natural bikini competitor? Okay, so when you look at bikini to begin with, they don't need to be super dry, to be honest. I mean, biggest thing with bikinis, before you start trying to dry them out real crazy, you just get them in pretty good shape. I mean, get them in pretty good shape. You don't have to do much. Biggest thing I notice with a lot of bikini girls, once you're really pulling down to get in good shape, is they're just not very big to begin with. So they lose fullness in the glutes and the hamstrings and the quads and a little bit in the delts, a little bit of the spots that they need fullness. So the biggest thing is making sure they're full after you get them lean enough. So if you can do that, they're normally in pretty good spot. As far as drying out, I mean, over-the-counter diuretic like Expel or H2O remove. Trying to think what else. I have people use trying to think of what it's called. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, to be honest, but lately it's been H2O remove from Project AD. That works. Expel will work from MHP. But again, I don't want to dry them out too much because I want the muscles to be full, especially in those areas, and not have a flat underbutt. You know what I mean? So that's going to be the most important thing, is just really get them in shape. You shouldn't have to dry out a bikini competitor, to be completely honest. Much past a little bit of diuretic, and possibly just tapering water the night before, cutting it off and putting a little sodium in the next morning. Kind of like a bodybuilder, but everything's less dramatic. Are there any differences in recovering Amenorrhea, and sorry if I butcher this, loss of periods, and other hormonal damages for a female competitor from prep between enhanced athletes and natural athletes, besides obviously getting off all PEDs? Yeah, so if someone's enhanced, I mean, getting off the PEDs is going to help, obviously, regulate hormones. That's important. Also, from what I've found, it's mostly time related. You can add fats into the diet. That's important. Cholesterol, making sure, hormones being fat soluble, cholesterol being important for the hormone production, putting on a little bit of body fat. But two biggest things I should say are actually more like time and body fat. Your body wants to be regulated. It wants to be back at a baseline body fat level. If normally I can kind of get away with keeping someone a little bit lower body fat if I take my time and get the calories up enough and go slow enough, and they've in a surplus for a long enough time. But for some girls, the fact of the matter is, you just aren't going to get their period back unless they put on body fat. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what else you do. That's just how the cookie crumbles. So staying lean all year round might not be in the cards for them if they want a period. If they don't care about it and everything else is really normal, relatively normal, and hormonally and on their blood work, then hey, that's a personal choice. That's something I definitely talk seriously with my clients about and kind of see what their long-term goals are and what their opinions are on it. Make sure we're on the same page, because that can be a constant struggle at times. But differences, no, not really. Once you get the PDs out of the equation, it's not really much different. Okay, with regard to meal timing, let's say someone can't fit in 5 meals with 3 hours in between meals. Would you rather them double up a meal or only eat 4 with proper spacing between each meal, or would you rather them stick to 5 with a 2-hour gap? I don't think it really matters, to be honest, either one. I prefer just a slightly longer gap because I feel like my ghrelin hormone makes me want to eat a lot more when I eat more often. I just don't like that, and it's just easier if I have a little longer gap from a work standpoint. 5 meals works really well for me. I can do that 5 meals plus an intra workout because my days are really long. So that works fine for me. I wouldn't hesitate to put someone on 4 meals though. Wouldn't even bother me, especially on a training day. I have guys that use 4 meals and an intra workout meal, which is basically like another meal anyhow. I wouldn't hesitate to do that at all. I think that's perfectly fine. Frankly, I find people do a little bit longer on the slightly longer gaps, get a little bit better result from that. So if you're struggling and it's stressing you out, it's not worth the stress. I'd go down to 4 meals. What are your thoughts on periodizing carbs solely around workouts versus the same amount sustained throughout the day? Given the same individual, do you see more benefit from the insulin sensitizing and periodizing carbs, or having steady stream for more balanced blood glucose levels? Okay, so it's basically the same question. Yeah, if you're going to be more insulin sensitive at certain times of the day, from a body comp standpoint, on paper it makes more sense to eat carbs around those times. Now, you're going to see people that argue that it doesn't matter, that it's just the day as a whole. The issue there is that if you want to look at body comp over the long term and where those nutrients are partitioned to, I think you could make a better argument. In an acute situation, it's just calories. You're going to lose weight regardless, you're going to gain weight regardless, as long as you're in the surplus, no matter where you put the carbs. But I think over time it makes a little bit more difference, simply because you're looking at small bits of differences in partitioning adding up over time. That could be months, could be a year, whatever it is, whole contest prep, doesn't matter. I think, excuse me, I think in a deficit, it might actually matter slightly less than a surplus because you're storing more in a surplus. So something to think about. But yes, definitely periodizing carbs. Plus, most people feel better also just without spiking insulin, dropping insulin, spiking insulin, dropping insulin, or blood sugar. Also, what are your thoughts on stimulants and their effects on digestion and GI distress? Some people don't have any problems with them. Some people do. They are stimulating. Some stimulants can stimulate bowels and stuff like coffee. Obviously, you drink the coffee, you have to shit 5 minutes later. Some people. I think it's just person dependent. Stimulants are so fast acting and distinct as far as you're taking them, that you should be able to figure it out if they're causing issues, and if they are, then probably ought to get rid of them, or time them differently, or take them away from food. Normally stimulants work better away from food anyhow, so that would probably be my suggestion if you're using them, and then you're less likely to have this issue to begin with. All right. Keys, in your opinion or to your knowledge, to bringing that hard granite look for females. A friend of mine is a pro women's physique competitor and comes in lean with glutes, but we're just talking and she was like, I don't know how all of Matt Porter's girls come in just so hard, vascular, granite looking. There's got to be something missing. Just a side note, she is enhanced Var-Winnie Clin. In the past few months, she started using Growth and Primo. Okay, well, part of this is genetic. I hate to say that. It's like a cop-out, but it definitely is, because you see, I'm assuming he's talking about girls that compete at a little higher level, maybe national level, higher, placing higher regional level, pro level. That's the reason they're there. You don't see this at a lower level because those girls wouldn't be at a lower level if they look like that. So there's a genetic component to it. Skin thickness. Skin thickness is definitely a thing. I mean, you're looking at skin cells. Someone with thicker skin is going to have a little bit harder time doing this. Ultimately, it comes down to subcutaneous fat, getting rid of all that fat that's right under the skin, everything there. That's going to produce that look. Also, PEDs do play some part in it. I mean, you obviously are going to be a little more vascular, slightly fuller when you're on PEDs. So that's going to certainly make a difference, since whether someone's natural or enhanced. I think there's a couple things. It's just dieting long enough and hard enough, and starting a prep with a relatively good metabolic function. And you can pretty much assume that if you start a prep with pretty good metabolic function, you have decent genetics, your skin's not ridiculously thick, and you don't have an abundance of fat cells in any one given spot, then you can probably replicate this look. And you're probably going to have to bring estrogen down a little bit, like Nolvadex, for example. Even an AI, a full AI, something like a Remodex or Romacin, is likely gonna have to be used. Maybe not. I mean, I've had a few girls I work with, they get hard dry without that. So those are probably the components that you're looking at, and you can pretty much assume that after you get into that shape, even if you started off pretty darn good to begin with, your metabolism and your hormones are going to be in a world of hurt, and it's going to take some time to recover. So you can get there. Might not be pretty, but is it possible? Is it possible for everyone to look like that? Females? No. Nope. Not even guys. I think that you would do so much damage to their body, and metabolically they would just completely shit out before you even got close to that. So it's just not. That's just how the cookie crumbles. All right, next one. Getting towards the bottom here, so stick with me. How do your training programs vary between a natural client and a supplemented client? They're honestly not a whole lot different. I mean, main thing, recovery ability, because is going to be a little bit better. Growth will be a little faster. Protein turnover is better. You're obviously synthesizing protein a little bit faster, and that's going to help. But at this end of the day, I mean, a lot of the recovery comes from it's nervous system related, and these supplements aren't necessarily enhancing your nervous system, not to much extent. So I find that while people feel like they can train on anabolics, that catches up with them pretty quick, because their CNS burns out before anything else, and they're still overtrained even though they're on. So recovery is definitely enhanced and growth sped up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can train more the whole time. So not a lot changes, just maybe a little bit more, but you still have to be wary of overtraining the nervous systems. One more, it looks like, regarding peri-workout nutrition, be it Meadows, Milos, Mutants, throwback to the OLM forums or others, approaches that utilize intra-workout carbs and EAAs. Do you believe they have merit in enhancing recovery times, maximizing muscle protein synthesis without the super compensatory effects of exogenous insulin use? Yeah, and I say that because exogenous insulin is obviously going to override pretty much everything at that point, but at the same time, you're taking these things during a time when you're already pretty insulin sensitive, and you are going to produce your own insulin. You should produce plenty of it if you're insulin sensitive. Your body should be able to cover those intra-workout carbs easily, And that's why some people notice they take the intra-workout carbs and they get a better pump during their training. That's because they're insulin sensitive and their body's producing insulin and it's partitioning those nutrients just like it would be if you injected exogenous insulin. So it's just to a lesser extent. So definitely it gets the stuff where it needs to be, basically. And then obviously talked about above with the being more insulin sensitive, it just makes sense to have them at that time because the partitioning is better. You can get them where they need to be during a time when recovery is vital, even though recovery is obviously a pretty much all the time process. You are going to slow down, you're going to pretty much tap into recovery pretty quick. So at maximizing NPS, yeah, because I mean, a lot of people are adding, you're also adding in things like hydrolyzed whey, essential amino acids, hydrolyzed casein, pepto-pro during this time when you're pretty insulin sensitive. So you're getting it to the muscles during a time where GLUT4 is ready to rock and roll. Yeah, I mean, makes sense. So definitely, yes, you don't need exogenous insulin. You will still get the effects without it, though it is going to make it more pronounced. I think that's it for today. Thank you guys. We're running up about 22 minutes almost, so I'll cut myself off here, and you guys have a good night, and I'll talk to you next time.